This is Metro Week. Our top story, the Reid Park Zoo. We look at recent animal births and deaths and ask the zoo's manager about animal welfare and public education. Then, a review of the week's news with our Journalists Roundtable.
Either way, though, you're going to have a situation where this is going to blow another hole into the state budget.
He doesn't like the idea of these kids being housed in his county.
Hi, I'm Andrea Kelly. Animals die at the zoo. That's no surprise, but we wanted to see if the numbers in Tucson reveal any trends. First, we'll look at how zoos are regulated, and then we'll ask how Tucson manages its zoo. The Reid Park Zoo is one of more than 200 accredited zoos or wildlife parks in the country. The designation is from the Association of Zoos and Aquariums. The association looks at how animals are treated, including where they are kept and how many are living together. It requires mental and physical stimulation for the animals and 24-hour access to a veterinarian. Chris Veers, executive director of the AZA, says accreditation tells visitors how a zoo is doing.
Accreditation means excellence in animal care, excellence in conservation education. It means that the zoo is meeting all of these standards and is a 21st century world-class zoo.
Veer says the zoo fills out a 30-page questionnaire about its policies. Then a team of inspectors and veterinarians visits the zoo. Every 5 years, the zoo repeats the process if it wants to reapply for accreditation. The Reid Park Zoo's accreditation was renewed this year. It has more than 400 animals and is constantly managing babies, middle-aged, and elderly animals. There's no obvious trend in the numbers of births or hatched animals, but if the zoo keeps pace with the first 6 months of this year, it will have about the same number of new animals for the third year in a row. The zoo also tracks deaths, including the age of an animal at the time it died, when that age is known. In the last 5 years, deaths include the big animals we hear about in public announcements, such as a female polar bear that had an enlarged heart and a giraffe that was accidentally fed poisonous oleander trimmings. The report also lists smaller animals, such as a giant African millipede and a 33-year-old blue-crowned pigeon. What can those raw numbers tell us about how the Reid Park Zoo compares to other animal exhibitors?
There are no hard line rules on what is a trend. It's one of those really hard variables. It depends on what are the species in the collection because, they all live different lifespans. Is the collection geriatric or not? In that case, we're going to expect to see more animals die. So lots of dependent variables, so there's not a comparison per se.
Why then do zoo animal deaths get attention? We asked Jason Jacobs, the administrator of the Reid Park Zoo.
We have over 400 animals, and every animal that lives at the zoo will one day pass away. And there's a couple reasons why it could pass away, and in some cases it's an example of animals far exceeding their natural lifespan. We've had rhinos pass away here well into their 40s. A rhino would not last that long in the wild. In other cases, we had a baby tapir that was born in January of 2014. Its mother immediately rejected it, and our staff worked around the clock, 24 hours a day, to save that animal's life. And it just didn't happen. Something was off with that baby, and it passed away. Now, through that animal passing away, our staff learned a lot, and it was tragic, but at the same time, I know my staff was completely committed to raising that youngster. So there's many different reasons why animals can pass away at a zoo. You have to remember that the zoo it's a living collection, and while we have animals pass away for various reasons, sometimes due to disease or old age or other reasons, we also have animals born all the time too.
How do you manage some of the older animals in the zoo?
As more advances are made in husbandry and the science and care of these animals, they're living longer. So you have animals that have arthritis, you have animals that get cataracts, and it's just like people. As they get older, we get some health ailments, we have some challenges, and some of these animals do too, and we manage them in very different ways. Each animal is managed to that animal's individual needs.
You mentioned learning from some of the deaths that you have seen. I know you're required to do a necropsy, the animal version of an autopsy, when an animal dies. What have you learned from those?
It tells us what the animal died of. And if you think about it, how many times have, I'm going to use this example, a rhinoceros, how many times have people been able to study the body of a dead rhinoceros? So we can learn a lot from it. We can learn about its anatomy. We can learn about the effects of old age on a rhinoceros. Rhinoceros in the wild, for instance, they usually don't get arthritis because they don't live long enough to develop that. Because if they do, if they show any sign of physical weakness, they're going to get picked off by a predator, or sometimes killed through interspecific competition with other animals of their own species. So it gives us the opportunity to see the different medical effects, different ailments or diseases that can affect animals, and sometimes you can learn more about humans that way too.
The other end of the life cycle, you have births that you have to deal with, and young animals. Behind you is the pregnant elephant right now who's due any time. So how do you balance the needs of baby, brand new animals, middle-aged, and those elderly animals?
We really manage the animals based on the species needs, and we use the best practices by talking to other zoos and conservation organizations, and then we apply those to the individual animals that we have here at the zoo. We have 2 white rhinos right now. We have an older female named Ibanga. She's arthritic, she's in her mid-40s, and then we have a young male who's 13 named Fireball. Much different animals. You know, I mean, physically they're very different. Fireball will run around the paddock, and where Ibanga, she kind of likes to take her time and likes scratches from some of our staff members. You know, it's a complex organization. I mean, we're taking care of many different species. Some of them are very rare, and what a lot of people might not realize is that we just don't show these animals here. A lot of these animals are part of national conservation programs like our elephants, where animal populations within the U.S. are managed as one. They look at the genetics, they have a stud book to determine which animal should be paired up with which. That's exactly how we had our lion cubs, which were born in December of 2013. The parents were brought here designated to breed. They've had 2 litters. And now their genes are overrepresented in the gene pool, so our female lioness is on birth control. We want to be responsible, and that's how we balance the need too. We look at what we can do well and what we have the physical facilities to manage and what we have the staff expertise to do well.
One of the zoo's roles, or every zoo's role, is public education, right?
Correct.
I assume you also have some animals, and you mentioned some are not on display all the time. How do you figure out what's on display, what's not, how you're educating the public about the animals you have altogether?
Well, education is one of our key goals, and it's part of our mission. It's an integral part of our mission. I believe that there's an inherent value just in having a zoo, that it's educational. People come here not necessarily to get an education or to learn about animals. Our studies show that people come here to spend time with their family and to see animals, but I can guarantee you that if we do a good job of presenting those animals in a meaningful way in natural environments, people are going to learn while they're here. They're going to learn something about the animals, and that's done through great interpretive graphics and experiences like we have at our elephant exhibit. And more importantly, not only are they going to learn about the animals, they're going to care about the animals, and that translates into conservation. We do pull some animals off exhibit and house them off exhibit and give them a really comfortable retirement. We have a sun bear that's in her mid-30s, far exceeding her natural lifespan, but we spoil her. That's an anthropomorphic term, but we really spoil her. People go back there all the time on behind-the-scenes tours and give her peanuts and visit with her, and she has access to go outdoors. She's not locked in. She can go in and out, but she prefers to be indoors, so we give her that indoor access, and she does go out occasionally. A couple weeks ago, I saw her going in the pool and taking her paws and putting water on herself, and then she went right back in. We're committed to doing the best we can for these animals, and at the same time creating a meaningful experience for our guest. And it's a delicate balance, but I feel we do a really good job at that here.
Not everybody is a fan of zoos. How do you respond to that criticism that I'm sure every zoo experiences?
I realize that some people are not a fan of zoos, but I can tell you I've been working in zoos since I was 13, so it's been over 20 years for me. And in my short career, I have seen species saved from extinction because of zoos. If it were not for zoos, there would be no American bison, there would be no California condor, no golden lion tamarin, Arabian oryx, black-footed ferret. They would all be extinct. You know, if some people don't agree with zoos, that's okay. I'm not here to change their mind. I'd love to change their mind, but sometimes it is very difficult to change people's ideas. I think to myself, we are one of the most visited cultural attractions in all of southern Arizona. So we must be doing something right. We're saving species from extinction.
How do zoos save species? Is it a collection of genes that the animals existed in zoos and they were able to be reintroduced?
So there's a couple different ways. With saving species from extinction, some of the great stories you hear about are animals like the American bison, which about 100 years ago, these animals were critically endangered. And zoos like the Bronx Zoo in New York, the Smithsonian's National Zoo in Washington, D.C., and several others had several large herds which they were breeding animals and reintroducing back into the wild. California condor is the same way. In 1987, there were only 23 left. Now, there's more California condor flying the skies of Arizona and California than there are in zoos, which is a good thing.
Hi, I'm Lorraine Rivera. Join me next on Arizona Week when we take a look at what the future holds for thousands of undocumented children here from Central America.
In many cases, they actually have to return to their home country because there's no legal remedy, there's no way for them to stay, as sad and difficult as the situation may be.
Later on Arizona Week.
Here to discuss the top news of the week, Thelma Grimes of Tucson Local Media, Jim Ninsel of the Tucson Weekly, and Christopher Conover of Arizona Public Media. Thank you all for being here today. Christopher, let's start with the news of today. We got a court ruling that involves how the state should be spending or funding K-12 education. Before we get into what happened today, what's the background of this case?
In 2000, Arizona voters approved a ballot proposition that said the state's education funding formula should be tied to inflation. Very simply, if inflation goes up each year, the state should give a certain amount of money to deal with that in the education funding formula. In 2009, when the state got into some financial difficulties due to the recession, the legislature decided to hold that money back, and they did that for 4 years. Last year, the state Supreme Court said that was incorrect and the legislature should have given that funding, but they left it up to lower courts, in this case the Maricopa County Superior Court, to decide how much to give and when that money needed to be given, and that's the decision we got this morning.
So Jim, what did they say in that decision?
Well, they said that you have to start taking care of the inflation adjustment at the very least, and they left open the question of whether or not the money that they did not provide over the last couple of years needs to be provided or not. Either way, though, you're going to have a situation where this is going to blow another hole into the state budget. The state already is burning through its rainy day fund at a pretty rapid pace, and you're looking at structural deficit and actual shortfalls once that rainy day fund is blown through in the next couple of years, and this is going to make it that much harder to balance the budget.
That's what I was going to bring up, is what is that going to do to the state budget they've already approved this year, but what does that do for our local school districts as well? Are they going to see that money at the beginning of the school year, or when do they see the money?
I think that still needs to be resolved because the legislature is not in session to actually provide that additional funding, so that remains to be seen exactly when that's all going to be worked out.
And some comments coming out of the Capitol earlier today after the ruling came down. It sounds like they're going to have to make some changes to the current state budget, which of course just went into effect. The local, as Jim said, we don't know exactly how it's going to affect local and when, but the judge indicated that now is the time to give that money, the initial amount for this coming year, which is $317 million, that the state now needs to figure out, and pretty quickly.
And just so I'm clear, are they going to have to pay back for the 4 years they've been doing this, or is it just going to be the 1 year and go back to doing it the correct way?
The judge didn't say. We're going to have another hearing on that to see if they need to go back the 4 years and how that will be worked out. But at this point, they need to do $317 million now going forward.
In the City Council this week, we had a couple of different immigration issues happening. One of them was some tweaks the city made to how it's enforcing the state's immigration law, SB 1070. Christopher, how significant were those changes, and describe some of them?
Some of them sound very minor on the surface. For example, Tucson police officers can no longer pull someone over for a traffic stop. For example, the light over your license plate is out, just for the purpose of checking your immigration status. They can't use that. They've now codified that. That was already kind of an unwritten policy. That's now going to be codified. What one of the bigger changes is going to be is, If they pull someone over and they suspect that they are in the country illegally and they contact the federal government, ICE specifically, to see this person's immigration status, if the officer writes the ticket for whatever the traffic stop was, speeding, illegal right turn on red, whatever it was, once that ticket is written, if ICE hasn't gotten back to them, this ends the contact with the officer, and the officer will go on to do whatever they were going to do. So they will no longer be detaining the person and waiting until ICE comes back. So ICE is going to have to answer very quickly.
And that's Immigration and Customs Enforcement, the federal agency.
Federal Immigration and Customs Enforcement, yes.
So once the officer writes the ticket, that person leaves, the person who got the ticket leaves, and if the immigration question is unresolved, it's unresolved.
It is unresolved at that point.
Are they going to track these calls? Say they do let someone go that didn't have their papers and were in fact illegal. Are they going to track these calls going forward, or is it just done once they let them go?
There is some tracking involved here, but the tracking that they were talking about in the city council meeting really had to do with how many of these types of calls they're making and percentages of people pulled over and things like that.
We should also point out that this comes after a few claims were filed by the American Civil Liberties Union against the city of Tucson regarding this enforcement. Another claim was filed against the city of South Tucson. City of South Tucson also changed the way it's enforcing. So that's kind of what led us to this point. Jim?
And I think part of this is ACLU wants to track how these stops are being done and who's being stopped and who's being asked whether or not they're a citizen, because there's still the whole question of whether the papers, please element of the SB 1070 is constitutional or not. The Supreme Court left that unsettled and said it was not currently ripe for a challenge. And I think one of the reasons the ACLU and the City Council want to start tracking these numbers is so that there could be a challenge to that element of the SB 1070.
So does this create some confusion? You have the state government saying the federal government's not doing their job, so it's our responsibility. Now you have the city saying this is a federal issue, we're not doing it when the state is telling them to. How does that create the confusion on what you're supposed to actually be enforcing now?
Well, I think the enforcement of immigration law, the Supreme Court has held, is a federal responsibility and not a state responsibility. The question is whether or not the local authorities have the ability to request whether or not someone is in the country legally or not. And so what this does is basically hamstring the ability to bring ICE in to actually check that. Mm-hmm.
Similar topic, different specifics. The City Council also sent a letter to the President this week asking him to take some action on the current immigration crisis. The City Council can't really do anything about federal immigration law, as we've just said. So is this just kind of yelling into the wind?
I think it's just another effort to try to encourage the Obama administration to treat this, as Raul Grijalva is saying, as a humanitarian crisis for the children who are crossing the border here, and the concerns that if they do return to their home country, they're going to face either being recruited by gangs if they're boys or pulled into prostitution if they're girls. And that's one of the reasons parents are sending their kids out of these countries, at least if you talk to the advocates of these kids.
And part of it being with the humanitarian crisis, there's a lot of talk about the facilities that are opening here in Tucson to house them. We've got the one on Oracle and Drockman, but just yesterday, Paul Babu, the sheriff of Pinal County, announced there'd be one in Oracle that would house up to 50 children.
I actually talked to Sheriff Babu last night at an event here in Tucson for Christine Jones, and he commented on that, and he's very upset about that. He doesn't like the idea of these kids being housed in his county. He wants to know who the kids are, what their status is, and he just doesn't like this at all. He's very upset about it.
And District 1 Supervisor with Pima County, Allie Miller, said the same thing this week. She's worried about the health issues. She's worried about the lack of communication. She feels that they're getting, how many kids? What about the health issues? So I think some of it's centering around right now communication, and that's what it sounds like Sheriff Babu as well as Supervisor Miller has stressed this week.
Thelma, on another topic, this week the cover of Inside Tucson Business is focusing on women in the workplace, women at the top. You found that there are some high-profile CEOs in Tucson, in the Tucson area, who are women, but you also still found there are some issues with pay equality, for example.
Yeah, we wanted to look at not just women locally, but we wanted to look on a national scale of where women have come. And we were able to find with Bureau of Labor Statistics, a great report on a 50-year snapshot. So if you look at women in the 1950s when they really started entering the workforce, a handful of them were doing domestic, secretarial duties, teachers, some farm work. Well, now you go 50 years later into 2000, you've got 66 million women in the workforce, and now they're doing, they're in boardrooms, they're CEOs, they're taking over more. And then a projection up 50 years later for 2050, they're looking at 92 million women being in the workforce. And while pay equality is going to be, a political issue this year as well, they still found that in 1970s, women were making 62% of what a man makes. However, in 2000, they're making 81%, and Arizona is actually making 87% of what a man makes. So they are making the progress, and it was interesting to find how we are progressing as the years go by and society changes.
And does education play a role in either how many women are getting those top jobs and or how much they're paid?
Education is playing a major part, especially if you go from the 1950s to now. Women used to, very few got their high school diplomas, if even going to college. Now, more and more are going to college. They're getting their degrees. And, take Arizona schools, for instance. NAU alone has 64% female enrollment. And stats show that once women are in school, they're more likely to finish their degrees. However, they are still staying in the fields of nursing and that kind of thing. So they're staying traditional to some of the roles we've taken, like teaching, but they are getting higher educations.
There were a couple stories about medical marijuana this week. Christopher, I want to start with the local one, a U of A researcher who was fired actually last week, just as she was going to set out looking into whether medical marijuana plays a role in treatment or of symptoms with PTSD. What impact does that have?
It's an interesting story. She was notified that her contract was not being renewed. She was an employee that has a contract renewed each year.
Something that happens all the time, right?
It happens all the time, exactly. And in those cases, there can be no cause. Just, we're not renewing your contract. And that's what happened. She blames politics because she's been trying to set up a research study on the effects of marijuana on veterans with PTSD. And she says that the politics behind all of that ended up getting her fired. She also says the IRB, which is the university's research board, they have to approve all research that involves humans, has already approved it. And that's why she says this is just politics.
What politics? Is she talking about politics internally at the U of A, state politics, federal?
State politics, most likely, is what she's talking about. There's been a lot of politics up at the legislature regarding PTSD research, medical marijuana use, and things like that, and where the two of them are coming together. And because this is a state university that receives state dollars, she is pointing to the Capitol in Phoenix as part of the reason for her firing. University officials have not commented. They said this is an internal personnel matter and they don't comment on those publicly. So we don't know what the reason is for her firing at this point. We kind of only have her word to deal with.
It sounds like her attorneys are preparing potentially a lawsuit over this.
They're certainly talking about it. Nothing's been filed at this point, but I don't think anybody will be surprised when those papers get served.
Okay. And Jim, also we saw this week the director of the State Department of Health has approved medical marijuana as a treatment for PTSD. What are the politics behind that, speaking of politics?
Well, it was originally rejected by the State Health Department, and supporters of this filed a lawsuit. An administrative law judge said that they needed to revisit it. The State Health Department revisited it and then agreed to expand the medical marijuana rules to include that.
Do we know how many patients this is going to affect now, being able to get medical marijuana based on PTSD?
I don't think there's any real estimates of that because it's a matter of now going to find a doctor's recommendation and being able to say, hey, yes, this patient should at least be able to use medical marijuana for this. So it's a matter of who goes and finds a doctor who will give that recommendation and how many doctors would be willing to do that. But it will certainly expand the pool of people eligible for the medical marijuana card.
A couple of interesting things about that decision from Will Humble. First of all, it's not in effect right now. It doesn't go in effect until January 1st, so there's some run-up time on this one. And also, he said in order to be eligible, if you are a patient being treated for PTSD, you have to have been treated in what I guess we could call a conventional medical manner first. And if that's not working, then you're eligible for the medical marijuana card. So there are some interesting little caveats. Supporters of medical marijuana use for PTSD and in general say that's just politics and Humble's just trying to put things off and shrink that pool of people.
And you know, there's a lot of talk that in 2016 we're going to have a ballot initiative that would legalize marijuana for recreational use. So a lot of this may not even matter in a couple of years if indeed that happens. You talk to Ethan Orr, the state lawmaker, who Republican state lawmaker who represents Southern Arizona. He says he's working to try to set up regulations now in anticipation of that ballot initiative in 2016, so the state's prepared if indeed that does go forward.
In 2014, we've got our congressional elections, and we're starting to see some of the campaign finance figures coming in. Those reports aren't due for a few more days, but the figures are starting to be announced. Jim, what do we know so far about Congressional District 2?
In Congressional District 2, where Ron Barber is running for re-election, he's the only person to have released his, as far as I know, and he released a report saying he raised about $550,000, which is the best haul he's had yet. In the last 3 quarters, he's actually been outpaced by one of his Republican rivals, Martha McSally, who has raised more money than him in each of those cycles. We'll see whether she's raised more. I reached out to the McSally camp for comment on his figures earlier this week and have not heard back from them.
We should point out that the deadline is July 15th, so they still have a few more days to file those.
Next
They're not
week.
late.
It's the people who are doing really well are going to start releasing their figures. Ann Kirkpatrick over in CD1 released also a report saying she'd raised over $400,000, and you haven't seen any of her Republican opponents release anything. They've had trouble raising money throughout this entire cycle over in CD1.
We also saw, Christopher, that Martha McSally, the Republican running in Congressional District 2, reserved some ad time for this fall, essentially reserved spots where TV commercials will air later in the year. What does that tell us at this point?
What that tells us is a couple things. A, she's expecting to win her primary, and I think the conventional wisdom is that she will win it. And she's expecting that she's going to need that ad time, that it may be close enough that she's reserve it now so it doesn't get bought up by Ron Barber or some other group. We expect a lot of outside money to be coming in and buying up ads and ad space. So she's just preparing for that November election, and it sounds like she's preparing for a close one.
And we've seen in past years, right, that this ad time does get bought up. It gets hard to buy it as the cycle goes on. So a reservation might not be a bad idea if you want to be on the airwaves. Is that
exactly? That ad time will go. We're starting to see plenty of ads, for example, in the gubernatorial race throughout Arizona. So the ad time, because of the gubernatorial race, is going to be harder to come by, because while stations love the money, at the same time, other car dealers, furniture stores, everything else, they want their ad time too.
And, well, you've also seen the House Majority PAC, a Democratic political action committee, also up its buy on behalf of Barber in this market. This market's pretty cheap to buy in compared to Phoenix, so it's not surprising that you see these guys, going out and reserving this time this early. But I think the CD2 race is certainly going to be one of the most competitive in the country. I think you're right that Martha McSally is considered the front runner. Her 2 Republican opponents have very little name ID, and they haven't raised much money in previous cycles, and Martha is, I think, got a lot of money and is being looked at as one of the top candidates in the country as far as a Republican challenger. They're looking at this as one of their big pickups this year. So we're certainly going to see a very lively campaign between the Barber and McSally camps. You're already seeing that, and Barber's already rolling out his endorsements. He rolled out a veterans endorsement earlier this week, and there's a big squabble over the Hobby Lobby decision in the last few days. So there's a lot going on in that race already.
How much will immigration affect strategy going forward, especially for Ron Barber and Ann Kirkpatrick with the immigration humanitarian crisis? I'm sure some of their strategy is going to be buying ads wrapped around that topic.
Jim, you've got about 30 seconds.
Okay. Well, I think immigration is a big issue here in Southern Arizona. I think that's going to be a big deal in this race. Ron Barber has always, you see him talking about, he's happy to see the additional money the president's sending here. He's not so much taking a stance on the president talking about, using his powers. Immigration reform is dead for the year in the House, and you haven't seen Ron Barber say anything about the president saying he's going to use executive action to try to deal with immigration issues.
Thank you all for being here this week. That's all we can fit into this show. That's our program. For more of this week's news, including stories from NPR 89.1, go to our website. Now, on Arizona Week, a Guatemalan refugee shares his experience of coming to the U.S. more than 20 years ago.